background that I grew up in the very, very conservative state of Utah. And one formative experience that I had in my kind of my coming of age politically was when I was an undergrad in the ancient times of the 2000s during the Bush administration. Um, the Iraq war and the Iraq invasion had a very big impact on me that I kind of in my gut, I opposed it, and it really it, it it politicized me, and I didn't really grow up in a very political family, but as I got older, I realized that yeah, they're all very Republican and very conservative. It's just we didn't talk really much about politics. Um, but the Iraq war changed everything. It really made the partisan lines crystal clear in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I wanted to know like how was the conservative movement and the Republican Party so effective at garnering public support for this war. And one thing that I keyed in on was their use of country music. And I noticed the way country music stars like Toby Keith, um, you know, were able to kind of create this idea that if you are an authentic working class person, you support the war and you're for the troops. And if you're critical of the war at all, you're against the troops, you're an intellectual, you're not a real American. And that was something that I even went on a talk radio show in Salt Lake and argued with the conservative host. And he said to me on that show when I was 23 that I didn't support the troops because I was criticizing the war. So it's a fun little tidbit. But one of the reasons I keyed in on country music specifically is that my brother was actually a country singer and he tried to make it in Nashville. And so um, I think when I entered graduate school, I had this vexing preoccupation with the relationship between style and ideology, between taste and partisanship, that it was so clear to me that these things were linked because of the way I watched Fox News and the Republican Party weaponize country music, a cultural form, right? That is not explicitly political, but became political. And so I entered graduate school with this question, and looking back now, that really was the kernel of the political cultural approach that I would develop in studying Fox News, that combines cultural analysis with political analysis to really make sense of why they've been so successful at creating this both compelling media brand, but also a highly effective form of political communication. So that was the beginning, I guess, my journey to Fox News. Another thing that led me to Fox News was that I actually started studying the historical relationship between the Republican Party and the country music industry, but dropped that project during my PhD studies because this once in a lifetime crisis happened called the Great Recession, which, by the way, I never thought I would see anything like it again. And this pandemic is yet more extreme crisis, it's crazy to think about. But the Great Recession, I was like, how are conservatives going to spin this, right? Because where, with the Iraq war, you could see they had an advantage because the country was generally patriotic and, angry about 9/11. So the political conditions were kind of favored a kind of hawkish policy response to, that would support the Bush administration, right? But I was like, there's no way they're going to be able to spin the Great Recession. This is an economic issue. Democrats always beg to have the political landscape be about economics because they felt like that was their strength. That was an issue they owned, right? Wealth inequality, that the Great Recession so nakedly revealed, right? The wealth inequality in the United States. And, I thought, well, how are they going to spin this? So why don't I watch how the number one conservative media outlet covers it? And what I found was, regardless of the empirical conditions, regardless of the climate that seemingly favored the left, I guess the broad kind of left, democratic left, I guess is a more accurate way to say it, that, and then I witnessed them very effectively capture even that crisis and redirect public anger away from Wall Street and where it was initially toward government and toward taxation, toward public sector unions. And I think that's when I realized that there was something more sophisticated going on with Fox News than I felt had been accounted for, right? there's something about their skill as communicators, right? And so my little boy is making a cameo in the background here, doing a lecture with his trampoline. Is, this is perilous, but yeah, so that was really the evolution of the project, and I wanted to look specifically at how they were framing the Great Recession, because it engaged an issue that I really care about, which is class, and specifically how it intersects with race. So yeah, that was the evolution of the project, kind of two-pronged, a deeper kind of personal reason, but then a more contingent set of historical circumstances that happened when I was in graduate school. So sorry, that was very long-winded, but